Welcome to the Coach Podcast with Coach Keren Eldad. Settle in. We're about to make you feel really good.
I think you actually have to have all your dreams come true to realize they're the wrong dreams. Matthew Perry. Welcome back, everybody. The Coach Podcast is back with a new season at long last. And in this podcast, in case you're tuning in for the first time, we deep dive into the fears and challenges that hold overachievers back, and we explore ways to overcome them for a more fulfilling life. I'm your host, Coach Keren Eldad, and today we're going to begin by diving right in to the really biggest obstacle in the way of the overachiever, something they tend to suppress and not feel, and that's the feeling of dissatisfaction, even and especially when your life looks like, from the outside, it's going great. Before I dive in, I want you to know that this podcast season is a prelude and companion to my book, the first book I've ever written, called Gilded, Breaking Free from the Cage of Ambition, Perfectionism, and the Relentless Pursuit of More. Is that already resonating? I'd love you to read it. You can get a copy right now or visit our website, breakingfreewithgilded.com. And of course, you can learn more on www.kereneldad.com. More about that later. Let's dive into the episode. Those who have listened in to this show before or who've heard me speak know that I like to start with a story. And this series is going to start in just the same way, perhaps with a more somber story than usual. It's a story that I heard this year around several dinner tables in the Hamptons, the glamorous summer resort, frequented by the world's wealthiest people. It is also a story that was much reported from the New York Times to the Guardian about Brandon Miller and Candice Miller. Here's the story. Brandon Miller, who was a 43-year-old, good-looking, wealthy, real estate mogul, died by suicide in the Hamptons on the weekend of the 4th of July, 2024. The 43-year-old killed himself by inhaling exhaust fumes in the garage of his $8 million home, while his influencer wife, Candice Miller, was touring Europe with their 2 daughters. It has since been reported that Miller was actually heavily in the red, and that he was at least $17 million in debt. As colleagues say, he and his wife were trying to live well beyond their means and were constantly flaunting their fake wealth in the Hamptons. Like I said, the Hamptons is a pretty steep place in which to social climb. There, you're not just keeping up with the Joneses, you're keeping up with the Bezoses. And at that level, no one can really compete. At least some wealthy Hamptons residents now speculate that the debt may have cost Miller his life. But really, what cost him his life was likely the keeping up of appearances, when he simply did not have the ability to back it up. And in so doing, he was living a lie, and very likely battling extremely dark secret thoughts. The build-up triggered his suicide in that garage, and when it happened, it is reported that a carbon monoxide alarm which alerted the fire department in Southampton, New York, sent a notification to Candice, the founder of the lifestyle blog Mama and Tata, who missed the July 1st warning because she was asleep at her $2,000 a night hotel in Italy's ultra-chic Amalfi Coast. How's that for cinematic? Candice awoke to learn that her husband had been found unconscious at their mansion in Watermill. This is an exclusive Hamptons enclave. And she came home after he passed. When I heard friends retell the story in the Hamptons, they were all agog. He was so good looking, they said. They seemed to have it all, they said. Such a nice family, they related. In the end, however, the truth seems to have been much darker and more complex. And its unraveling in this story is a perfect place to start our series, even though it's quite somber, as it offers a classic example of the secret lives of those who appear to be superstars but are in fact not, and are ridden with secrets such as debt, secrets like depression, which many of Brandon's friends told the Daily Mail and the New York Post he suffered from, secrets like mounting legal problems and professional incompetence, because it has been revealed that Ivy League graduate Miller had become embroiled in multiple lawsuits, posing questions about his honesty and the true state of his finances. Secrets such as being trapped in what is actually an unhappy marriage. This kind of story also highlights the common secret held by many around being in bad, toxic, unhappy marriages and struggles to maintain your gilded facade for your family's gilded lifestyle. For example, Brandon and Candace spent weekends in the Hamptons at that $8 million home and the bulk of their time at a $47,000 a month rental on Park Avenue in New York City's Upper East Side, which they were unable to afford. Though you wouldn't know it at all to look at them. The couple's opulent lifestyle, awash with designer clothes, decadent cocktail parties, and costly vacations, was showcased all over Candace's social media pages under an account that is now defunct. The story also uncovered and highlighted the existence of secrets like massive insecurity, fueling spending that is far beyond one's means. The story portrays the background for a moral fable, and though it is extreme and extraordinarily sad, I want to use this story to show just how easy it is to fall into a trap of your own thinking, one that spirals out of control. The premise is simple. Brandon and Candace were living a lie. Despite outward appearances of a luxurious lifestyle, of having it all and of having it all together, Brandon and his wife were living way outside any norm of reality. This facade then had to be maintained through extravagant spending, through social media, in other words, through further masking underlying their struggles. And much worse, masking depression. Masking the secret thoughts many of us would grapple with if we were hiding anything of this magnitude. So, even though it might not resonate with you directly and you might think, well, I'm nowhere near this, it's still a moral fable and it highlights the dangers of prioritizing appearances and materialism and achievements over genuine well-being and financial responsibility. The moral fable underlines the heart of the dilemma of any modern overachiever, a dilemma that I dive into in my book, Gilded, that's inherited in the cages that we build around ambition, perfectionism, and around our constant dissatisfaction, our constant pursuit of more. So, if you're open to it, I say we talk about it, and let's steer you clear of going anywhere near such a tragedy. Have you ever found yourself chasing after the next big thing only to feel that fleeting rush of excitement fade away seconds after achieving said thing? We've all been there. And probably you already know this already, but it occurs primarily because the key to lasting happiness is not found in external possessions, circumstances, or achievements. Which begs two questions. Number one, why do you keep chasing external possessions or circumstances or achievements anyway? And number two, how do you get past this hurdle to a life of true joy? I'm going to answer both these questions today, or begin to answer them. And don't worry, when you really get joy, it won't mean you're going to lose all your stuff. Material possessions and happiness are not mutually exclusive. They're just not mutual. That's all. I want you to picture breaking free from the cycle of chasing external markers of success only to find fleeting moments of happiness. I want you to imagine realizing that true fulfillment isn't something you have to chase. It's a state of being you can cultivate right now. To this end, I'm about to confront the societal pressure to measure our worth by external standards and empower you to rewrite that script on happiness, turning inward to discover your true source of joy. Breaking free from negative thought patterns, from desirous craving will not be easy. You're up against massive forces, both societal pressure that I just mentioned, but also your own prodigious ego. But we all start somewhere. So I'm going to guide you through the revelation, showing you what's in your way, and then the process, or the way out, showing you how to actively choose happiness, appreciate joy, and build a strong foundation of self-love and worthiness that steers you well clear of any masking. The beginning, or the revelation, lies simply in the admission that while you may be successful to a certain extent, none of the joy, contentment, and happiness you want have arrived. There is no shame in this game. It's just a shame if you stayed there. So let me help you wrap your head around this and come to terms with it. Because if you accept where you are, and if you're willing to feel this awareness within you, and you stop resisting it by, mentally telling yourself, God, she's so way off about me in your head, you will finally be able to begin to let go of it and to cultivate something new in its stead. In my book, I open with a story that might seem simple, but hits close to home for many people. Years back, as I embarked on my coaching journey, a client shared his hesitation about attending his Ivy League business school reunion. Why? Because an old acquaintance had casually remarked to him, if you're not making at least $2 million a year, why bother going? This struck me as odd, first because it's a very weird thing to say, and secondly because my client was an undeniably successful man by any measure. But he was considering skipping a reunion because he hadn't hit some arbitrary financial benchmark set up by his college buddy. This made me totally pause because here was someone with all the markers of a life that was extraordinary, but he was still feeling inadequate because of someone else's yardstick. Now, I refrained from saying, come on, dude, really? Because it was early in my practice, but I still understood that his irrational feelings are still valid. The sentiments also were not new. I myself had encountered them before, and I had seen them in other high achievers. Despite outward success, many of us feel a gnawing dissatisfaction and anxiety just because we really, really want to measure up. You probably know somebody like this, and I'm asking you to look for this within yourself. The inner conflict is not exclusive, and no one is immune from it. Even icons with immense success and unquestionably successful people like Matthew Perry faced. In his book, Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing, which was written before his tragic death from an overdose, Matthew Perry humorously recounted a similar experience. He was telling the story about meeting who he thought was M. Night Shyamalan in a restaurant, in a bar, I think. And it turned out that it wasn't M. Night Shyamalan. He was discovering all forms of imposter syndrome within himself, trying to be better than he was, trying to look better than he was, to this one person that he thought was M. Night Shyamalan. And my point is, if it comes to Matthew Perry's story, it can come to yours. In fact, I believe that the higher we swim societally, the harder it gets to pedal our way into real success. The perfect analogy here was offered to us by Truman Capote. Truman Capote's analogy was that of swans, which comes to mind. It's an analogy of which I learned not by reading his work, but by watching the television series Feud, Capote versus the Swans. Swans was the moniker Capote gave to his well-heeled gaggle of socialite friends, the women with whom he kept company, who made him famous and celebrated. People around him looked so super happy, like Babe Paley and Lee Radziwill, before he unceremoniously dumped them and threw them under the bus in an article called La Côte Basque. Anyway, here's why he called them swans to begin with. He called them that because swans glide gracefully on the surface looking all perfect while paddling furiously underneath. So his well-clad pals maintained a facade of perfection while he knew, because he knew them well, that they were battling inner turmoil and insecurity. And so do all of us, especially overachievers. I've actually termed the phenomenon the overachievement paradox. It's the constant juggle between outward success and looking like you're fantastic and on top of the world, and the inner discontent that it's masking. This leads to a perpetual cycle of pressure, unfulfillment, pressure, unfulfillment. And it's not just about missing reunions, friends, or dying by suicide. You don't even have to go that extreme. It's about tiny moments of self-betrayal, living with strained relationships, living with addiction, living with a pervasive sense of aimlessness and ignoring it. We have all chased external markers of success to just find ourselves trapped in gilded cages of our own making. But if you're resonating with this, there is a way out, and it's by acknowledging that there is a problem and embarking on inner work. Admitting that the rosy facade isn't good enough is the first step toward genuine happiness. So if any of this resonates with you, and if you're already feeling the tug of dissatisfaction despite outward success, I want you to know you're brave and you're not alone. Many high achievers grapple with this, often in silence. Acknowledging opens the door to profound personal growth and fulfillment. Now it's time to redefine success. It's time to seek happiness on our own terms rather than through external validation. In the couple of episodes that follow this, the journey will not be easy, but it will be worth it. By understanding ourselves and our true desires, we can break free from the confines of our gilded cages and live authentically fulfilled lives. If you really feel and resonate with that deeply in your heart and mind, and you're opening to it, now let's talk about what has caused the gap. Let's take you further. Let's discuss why you still chase the empty promise of external achievement, even when intellectually you do know better. When I meet a new client, I often ask a simple question. Do you view the world as friendly or as hostile? Surprisingly, this question unveils a lot about a person's core beliefs and the narratives they construct. Super intellectual, brilliant people believe that the world is a dog-eat-dog place, and all the stories that they create built upon that will stem from that worldview. The worldview that is negative versus a positive one, where the world is seen as abundant and full of opportunities. If you have a more realistic worldview, and I say that within quotations, where life is viewed as a constant struggle or for scarce resources, you're going to have a tough time around here, and you will yourself be constantly in a struggle for scarce resources. Often, people lean towards the latter perspective, even those who believe that they see the world as full of miracles and ponies and happiness. And by the way, that's not what the abundance mindset is, but I'm having some fun with it. Those who perceive the world to be hostile tend to have a life that is navigated reactively, that is locked in an unending battle against circumstances, and that are constantly trying to control things. Hashtag perfectionism. But here's the thing. Regardless of your outlook, you're living out a story that's shaped by that worldview, and you've woven tales about your origins and your strengths and your weaknesses and the obstacles that you face, and that means you also have the power to change it. I've been there myself. I myself have been tangled in narratives that painted my bank account as a bottomless pit, my bosses as adversaries, and my personal life as a series of unfortunate events that simply were tragic and outside of my own realm of control. These stories felt real to me, even though they were just interpretations of my experiences that were simply based on a hostile worldview. Now, my upbringing was relatively smooth sailing, no traumatic events, ordinary ups and downs. And yet I still found myself trapped in narratives of struggle and mediocrity. Why? Because like many others, I bought into the scarcity mindset. I bought into the belief that resources are limited and that we must compete for them, and that in order for me to succeed at anything, I must be a top competitor. That scarcity mindset breeds feelings of unworthiness, and they lead us to overwork, overanalyze, overcontrol, to manifest strife. It is a toxic cycle perpetuated by societal norms and familial influences. And it's not your fault if you've fallen into this trap. The antidote lies in claiming your power back and allowing yourself to adopt, initially just intellectually, the abundance mindset, which is the belief that there's more than enough to go around, that there's still time, that everything is okay, and you can make it so. This shift in perspective opens us up to new possibilities, and it frees us from the shackles of the perpetuity, the purgatory that is scarcity. This is a choice, a conscious decision to see the world through different lenses, and it's a choice with profound implications for our well-being, resilience, and overall quality of life. By challenging our negative thoughts and embracing optimism, we can cultivate a happier, more fulfilling existence. This shift isn't just personal, it's societal. Authors and thinkers have long argued for a more optimistic outlook, citing evidence of progress and prosperity, such as Steven Pinker and Rutger Bregman. And you know what? I think they're right. I don't think optimism is wishful thinking. I think it's a pragmatic approach to life that yields tangible benefits and at very least gets you many more possibilities than when you believe that scarcity is the only way. So, we've revealed two things. Number one, that your life is not as good as it looks, which is a good thing to admit because it's going to reveal to you that the dreams you've been chasing have been the wrong ones, or possibly been the wrong ones, which is going to help you turn inward and course correct. And number two, we've revealed that the main culprit of this external obsession is simply a worldview, which is also not serving you, but not definitive. And when you renounce the scarcity mindset, or at very least start to become aware of your scarcity thought patterns, you will begin to be able to rewrite your story and embrace a more hopeful future. Today, I want to offer you a tool, and I'm going to offer you a tool with every episode in this series because it's called Coached for a reason. Today's tool is observe your worldview, and if you can, redirect it from scarcity to abundance. To do this, simply start by challenging your own assumptions in any given moment of challenge. Ask yourself, am I reacting from a feeling that I'm being boxed into a corner and don't have any options? Or am I thinking for possibilities here? And then start to actively embrace the abundant possibilities around you. Here's a how-to. Let's say that you're in a moment of distress or coming upon a very critical decision. In that moment, I want you to ask yourself, where am I coming from? Does it feel like fear? Does it feel like excitement? If it feels like fear, do not move forward. Take a moment to gauge for your intention first. Awareness of our intention or our worldview is the first step towards a happier, more proactive life. If you can start to just discern where you're coming from, you will see that optimism isn't just a dream, but it is a reality-creating, solution-oriented mindset that will light up the path to everything you really want. My book's called Gilded, Breaking Free from the Cage of Ambition, Perfectionism, and Relentless Pursuit of More. I'd love you to read it, and you can get a copy now by going to breakingfreewithgilded.com. Thank you for listening. If you love today's show, please take the time to subscribe and leave us a good review. I'm going to see you on our next episode of this season of the Coached Podcast. Until then, have a great week.
Thanks for listening to the Coach Podcast.